Have you ever found yourself sitting in the quiet of your home, staring at your phone, waiting for a message that never comes? A birthday forgotten, a holiday skipped, a promise not kept. You wonder if they'll reach out. You tell yourself maybe they're just busy. You make excuses for them, even when your heart is aching from the silence. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. So many parents over 60 carry this silent weight. You've raised your children with love, sacrifice, and sleepless nights. You gave them your best years, your best efforts, and now it feels like they've moved on, like your love has become invisible, your presence taken for granted. But what if I told you, chasing them won't bring them back? That explaining yourself over and over won't make them listen? That pouring your energy into someone who isn't ready to receive it, especially your own adult child, will only leave you feeling emptier? It's a hard truth, but the moment you stop chasing is the moment you start healing. This isn't about giving up on your child. This is about returning to yourself, about honoring your peace, about remembering that your worth as a parent and as a person isn't based on whether or not your grown child texts you back. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Let's talk about silence. It might feel unnatural at first. After all, you've always been the one who reached out, the one who tried to keep the family connected, the one who sent the birthday cards, called on the holidays, forgave quickly, and bit your tongue too many times to count. But when your child repeatedly chooses distance, disrespect, or indifference, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is step back. Let the silence speak for you. Because silence, believe it or not, is not weakness. It is power. It is clarity. It is a message stronger than any words you could ever say. When you go silent, you're not shutting them out in anger. You're protecting your energy. You're saying, if you don't see my value, I won't continue to beg for your attention. Silence creates space. And in that space, your child has to face something they may not want to. The consequences of their own choices. It may not happen overnight. At first, they might feel relief. Finally, no more calls from mom, no more guilt trips from dad. But as time passes, and that silence stretches, something changes. The comfort of having you always there, always forgiving, always waiting, starts to fade. And for the first time, they're forced to sit with what your absence feels like. But here's the key. That transformation only happens if you stay silent. Because if you break the silence too soon, if you call just to check in, if you send that just thinking of you message, you don't just give away your peace, you interrupt their opportunity to reflect. I know it's hard, especially when your love for your child is so deep, so unconditional. But unconditional love doesn't mean unlimited access. It doesn't mean being a doormat for someone else's convenience. Sometimes, silence is the most loving thing you can offer, not to punish them, but to free yourself. You may feel the urge to fix it, to mend things like you always have, to hold the family together by sheer will, but chasing them will only teach them one thing, that they can continue to pull away and you'll always be right there, waiting. Let me say this clearly. You do not need to chase anyone, not even your own child, to prove your worth. There's an old belief many parents carry, one that says, if I love them, I'll never stop reaching out. But love is not measured by how many times you call. Love is not measured by how much pain you're willing to endure to keep the door open. Love is also knowing when to step back and let someone else learn the lesson on their own. And yes, your emotions will come. That knot in your stomach, that ache in your chest, that voice in your head that says, maybe if I just explain myself one more time, they'll understand. But here's the truth. You don't need to explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. Emotional control isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about not letting your pain drive your decisions. It's about learning to sit with the discomfort without reacting from it. You might cry. You might feel angry. You might go back and forth in your mind, wondering if you did something wrong. That's okay. You're human. But what matters most is that you don't let those emotions make you reach back out when what you really need is to stand still. You've been strong before. You've survived harder things than this. And you will survive this too. Because this time you're not reacting, you're reclaiming. Your silence is not bitterness, it's boundaries. It's saying, I'm not going to keep knocking on a door that doesn't open. You gave them everything. You raised them. You sacrificed parts of yourself for their future. You loved them unconditionally. You showed up. Now it's time to show up for you. That doesn't mean you stop loving them. It doesn't mean you erase the memories. It just means you redirect your energy into something that actually fills your cup, not empties it. Take that time you used to spend worrying and put it into your hobbies, your health, your friendships, your peace. Go outside, walk in the fresh air, read the book you never finished, call a friend who actually calls back, light a candle and enjoy the quiet, not as loneliness, but as freedom. You are not the villain in their story, but you also don't have to be the savior either. You are allowed to step out of that cycle, to stop chasing, to stop explaining, to stop apologizing for existing. And when the time comes, and it might, that they finally look around and realize what they lost, you'll still be there, not waiting, but thriving, strong, whole, and no longer dependent on anyone else to feel valued. They say silence is golden, but really silence is sacred. It's where your healing begins, where your wisdom grows, and where sometimes your child finally wakes up to what they took for granted. You are not being cruel. You are choosing peace. And peace is never something to feel guilty about. Sometimes choosing peace over people feels like you're doing something wrong, especially when it's your own children. You wonder, what kind of parent just lets go? But here's something to remember. Letting go doesn't mean you've stopped loving them. It just means you're no longer sacrificing yourself for a relationship that's become one-sided. You're not turning your back on them. You're simply turning back to yourself. As a parent, your instincts probably told you to fix everything, to smooth over the tension, to keep calling, to keep giving. And for a long time, maybe that worked. Maybe they did reach out once in a while. Maybe they still came home for the holidays. Maybe they even said, I love you, just enough to keep your hope alive. But love that comes with conditions, with silence, with emotional distance, isn't the kind of love that sustains you anymore. It drains you. And that's why you've chosen a new path, a quieter one. Because there comes a time in life, especially as we age, when our peace must become non-negotiable. The drama, the waiting, the emotional roller coasters, they're no longer welcome in your life. You've earned your rest. You've earned your right to peace. And if your child can't offer that, if they bring more heartache than harmony, then yes, you are allowed to take a step back and let the silence do the talking. That silence may feel heavy at first, but over time, it becomes something else. It becomes strength. You begin to notice that the world keeps turning, that your heart beats softer, that your mind starts to quiet. You begin to reclaim parts of yourself you lost along the way, parts you gave up trying to be everything for everyone. And while you're sitting in that silence, something interesting begins to happen. Not just in you, but in them. They start to notice the shift. At first, maybe they're relieved. Mom finally stopped nagging. Dad finally stopped texting. But after a while, that relief turns into discomfort. Not because you've said anything, but because you haven't. You've gone quiet. You're no longer orbiting their world. You've stepped out of the role they always assumed you'd play. And now they're left with questions. Why isn't she calling me anymore? Why doesn't he ask how I'm doing? Why did the messages stop? That silence, that space you created, becomes the consequence. Not punishment, not guilt tripping, just space. Uncomfortable, necessary space. And in that space, guilt grows. Not because you forced it, but because silence removes distractions. It removes excuses. And when people finally sit with themselves, really sit with their own choices, they begin to realize what they've pushed away. But, and this is important, they'll only feel that guilt if you stay truly gone. If you check in just once, even out of kindness, you interrupt the process. You release the pressure. You give them relief when what they truly need is reflection. You see, we often mistake doing nothing as weakness. But in truth, it takes deep strength not to pick up the phone, not to respond to the bait, not to rush in and fix the discomfort. When you stay gone, truly gone, you're not just helping them grow. You're helping yourself heal. And healing in this season of your life is not optional, it's essential. Because you can't keep pouring into a cup with holes in the bottom. You can't keep giving attention, your most valuable resource, to someone who doesn't appreciate or return it. And that brings us to something many people never think about. Your attention is currency. Every time you comment on their post, every time you send that just checking in text, every time you open up that old photo and wonder what went wrong, you're spending emotional energy, real, measurable energy. And like money, once it's spent, it's gone. Now ask yourself, is your attention being spent wisely? Are you investing it into people and places that fill you up? Or are you handing it over to someone who doesn't notice? Or worse, doesn't care? At this point in life, your attention is sacred. You don't owe it to everyone, especially not to those who consistently make you feel like an afterthought. That doesn't mean you're cold. That doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you're aware. You've grown. You've come to see that love without boundaries turns into self-neglect. So you stop feeding the cycle. You stop fueling their comfort while you carry all the emotional weight. And yes, you may see them trying to bait you back in. Maybe it's a vague quote on social media. Maybe it's a sudden like on your photo after months of silence. Maybe it's a random message that says, "Hey, just wanted to check on you." But you know better now. You know that reaching back out doesn't fix the root. It just delays the lesson. And if they truly want a relationship with you, a genuine, healthy one, it won't be because you chased them. It'll be because they chose to grow up and come to the table as equals. So, what do you do in the meantime? You live, you thrive, you rebuild your world, not out of bitterness, but out of balance. And one more thing, don't block them. I know that might sound strange. After all, you're trying to detach, to find peace. So wouldn't cutting off all access help? It might for a moment. But here's the thing. Blocking them gives them a story. Oh, mom blocked me. Dad must be mad. It lets them frame you as the one who gave up. But when you leave the door open just enough for them to see you doing well, it creates something deeper. Curiosity. Quiet power. They check your page. They see your smile. They hear from others that you've been active, enjoying life, finding joy again. And suddenly they realize they no longer have access to your world. Not because you slammed the door, but because you simply stopped waiting at it. You let go without drama. You stepped away without noise. And that kind of peace? It can't be faked. It can't be ignored. It's powerful. It's healing. And yes, it's rare. There's a moment in every parent's life, especially later in life, when you realize that peace is not something you stumble into. It's something you choose. And choosing peace sometimes means accepting that your adult children may not be able to meet you where you are. Not right now, maybe not ever. That realization is painful, but it is also freeing in a way that is hard to describe. Because once you stop chasing, once you stop begging, once you step back and let the silence settle, you begin to discover a truth you might have forgotten along the way. You matter too. Your feelings matter. Your time matters. Your heart matters. Your life still matters, even if someone else has forgotten that. And that leads us to something many parents never allow themselves to believe. You were the prize all along. Think about it. You were the one who showed up. You were the one who made the meals, attended the games, helped with homework, worked the long hours, sacrificed the sleep, and pushed through the struggles. You carried the load during the years they couldn't carry their own. You taught them, protected them, guided them, and shaped them into adults. You didn't walk away. You didn't give up on them. You didn't disappear. You loved them, deeply, fully, fiercely. And even now, that love hasn't disappeared. It's simply evolving into something healthier, wiser, and more balanced. Something that honors you as much as it honors them. But when a child grows up and chooses distance, when they take your love for granted, when they treat your presence like an option they can pick up or put down, that does not mean you failed. It means they still have some growing to do. And your silence creates the space for that growth to happen. You are not punishing them. You are not abandoning them. You are stepping back so you can breathe again, think clearly again, and stop carrying emotional weight that is no longer yours. You are allowing them to experience adulthood, not just the fun parts, but the responsibility that comes with relationships. And among those responsibilities is appreciating the people who have stood by you, especially your parents. If they can't do that right now, then stepping away is not unkind. It's necessary. Because the truth is, you cannot carry both your heart and theirs forever. At some point, they must feel the distance. They must realize what your presence actually meant. And sometimes the only way they realize that is when you no longer step forward every time they pull away. And in that space, something powerful begins to grow. Not resentment, not bitterness, but yourself. You start rediscovering who you are outside of parenthood. Maybe for the first time in decades, you're not defined solely by what you give. You start waking up thinking about your plans, your joy, your peace, instead of wondering whether today will be the day your child decides to call. You start noticing little things again. The warmth of sunlight on your hands, the comfort of a quiet morning, the beauty in your own reflection, as you remember that age does not take away your worth. And you begin, slowly and gently, to thrive. Not to make them jealous, not to prove anything, not to send a message, but because you deserve a life that is full, even if someone else stepped out of it. This is why you don't block them. Not because you need them to watch, but because if they choose to look, they should see the truth. That you did not collapse. That you did not beg. That you did not break. That you carried on with dignity, grace, and strength. Your thriving is not a performance. It's a natural result of taking your attention, your emotional currency, and investing it back into yourself. A walk in the morning, a new recipe, a book that makes you laugh or cry, a conversation with a friend who listens, a hobby you forgot you loved, a moment of silence that no longer feels heavy, but peaceful. This is what healing looks like. And as you grow, something else happens. The story you've been telling yourself begins to shift. Instead of asking, "Why did my child walk away?" you begin to ask, "Why did I believe I needed to chase them?" Instead of wondering, "What did I do wrong?" you begin to understand, some things were never mine to fix. Instead of saying, "I must not matter," you begin to realize, "I matter, even if others can't see it right now." You start reclaiming your identity, your voice, your joy. You stop shrinking yourself to fit someone else's comfort. And you remember that becoming a parent didn't mean your life belonged to someone else forever. It meant you loved deeply. And you still do. But love does not require self-abandonment. You are allowed to love them from afar. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to stop chasing. And when, not if, but when, guilt shows up for them, it won't be because you forced it. It won't be because you tried to manipulate them. It will be because your silence gave them the gift of reflection, the gift of consequence, the gift of perspective. Maybe one day they'll reach out with sincerity, not convenience. Maybe they'll apologize. Maybe they'll grow. And if that day comes, you'll meet them from a place of strength, not desperation. But if it doesn't come, you will still be whole. Because your worth is not dependent on anyone else's recognition. not even your child's. You were the prize all along. Your love was the blessing. Your presence was the gift. Your effort was the foundation. And if they walked away from that, then the loss is not yours. It's theirs. You are stepping into a new chapter now, one where your peace matters, your joy matters, and your life is full again. Let yourself enjoy it. Let yourself breathe. Let yourself be proud of how far you've come and how strong you've become. And as you move forward, remember this simple truth. You don't have to chase love. Healthy love walks towards you. You don't have to beg for respect. Respect is given freely. You don't have to hold on to people who keep letting go. You can love them and still let them be. Your story is not over. In fact, some of the best chapters may still be ahead. The chapters where you rediscover yourself, reclaim your peace, and redefine what family means in a way that honors your heart. If any part of this spoke to you today, I'd love to hear your thoughts or your story in the comments. You're not alone in this journey. Many parents your age are walking the same path, learning the same lessons, and finding strength in the same quiet moments. If you found comfort, clarity, or encouragement here, please give this video a like so more people can find it. And don't forget to subscribe to Strong Elderly Life for more guidance, support, and uplifting messages to help you live with peace, dignity, and strength. Here's to your healing. Here's to your peace. Here's to living your best life at any age.